Johara. Welcome back to my channel, to the Witchy Reader. So I'm going to do fantasy books for beginners. I know I did a video not that long ago that was kind of recommending fantasy books. Because I know a friend of mine was looking for some fantasy recommendations, but this one is strictly for beginners who might want to do fantasy, but might want to try to get into it, but isn't ready for the hardcore fantasy because they've never really gotten into it in the past. Some of these might be retellings or have adaptations with them, and that might be because some of those are a little bit more simple and easier to get into for if you're not exactly a fantasy reader. I still enjoy them, although I'm an experienced fantasy reader because I've been reading fantasy my entire life, and that's no joke. I read Harry Potter at a very young age, and I've been into fantasy ever since. But even an experienced fantasy lover can still like fantasy that works for beginners because it's still fantasy, and I still enjoy it, especially if I'm actually not the biggest into retellings, but lately I noticed that there are a few retellings I do enjoy, and then if there's a book that has a movie adaptation with it or a TV show adaptation, then the book I obviously like because I like the movie / TV adaptation. So let's just get in it, shall we? Let's see. Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel, because a lot of people love the movie and it's such a good book. There's like the beginning of it is just like the movie, but the majority of it, over half, is the sequel part with Max and Allison's daughter Poppy, and the stakes are higher than ever because freeing their sister also puts Poppy's family in danger, and the sisters also want to raise more witches, and the stakes are higher than ever, basically. But there is LGBTQ in here because Poppy is a lesbian, and I really love how they dealt with it because they normalized it, which is something I think we should do more in books and TV. Because Poppy was talking with her best friend Travis, and they were in the hall at school when Travis makes a sly comment teasing Poppy that her crush was walking over, and her crush was Isabella, and that they left it at that. And then the side plot of their relationship is just a normal high school crush, and I just loved how they normalized it like they would for a straight couple, and I love it so much. But yeah, so this is definitely easy to get into, especially if you've already seen the movie. Then you kind of already know the storyline, and you know about the Sanderson sisters, and you know about the magic system in it, and it just makes it easier to get into it. I think if you've already seen the adaptation to something, it is easier to get into the book version because then you already kind of know about it. Even if it is a sequel like that, you still already know how everything's built up, and even if things do change, obviously, it's still just easier to get into because you've already seen the movie adaptation or TV show adaptation or whatever they have. I also have this, Once Upon a Time. I don't know if you guys have seen the TV show. I absolutely love the TV show, and they did make books about a couple of the characters. There's 3 books. The third book I ended up unhauling because I didn't really like it all that much. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't bad. I don't even think I didn't like it. I think I rated 3 stars because it was cute little story. I wasn't as into it as I was in the first 2 books, and this is the first book, but you don't have to read them in order because they're about different characters, and they're just about characters that were on Once Upon a Time. This one's all about Red, the second one's all about Regina, and the third one's all about Henry and Violet's relationship. So don't get me wrong, Henry and Violet were cute, and the book wasn't bad or anything. It just not something I would want to read again. Red and Regina, on the other hand, they're 2 of my favorite characters. My 4 favorite characters have always been Belle, Regina, Red, and Selena, and the fact that they made books about 2 of them made me so happy. And I don't really have any books with sprayed edges, and I kind of like it. But yeah, it's really good. This one's called Red's Untold Tale, so it's just about Red. But if you've seen Once Upon a Time, then you already know how the magic system works, and you already know a little bit about Red's past, and you find out more about it on here, which I really like. So yeah. And then the Regina one is the same way. See, what else do I have? I have several books sprayed out here. Okay, here. This one is As Old as Time. Is part of the Twisted Tales series. The Twisted Tales are part of the same series, but they're more companion novels, so they don't really go together. But they're all just basically where it's about a classic fairy tale with a twist to it, changing the fairy tale, but it's still kind of the same fairy tale. And this one is about Beauty and the Beast, and it's the only one I've actually read so far. I did buy some of them that I want to read, and then I need to buy the Hercules one, because when I was buying the fairy tales that I liked, I hadn't actually seen Hercules at the time, so I decided to finally watch it, and I enjoyed it, and so I want to buy it. I only bought the ones for the fairy tales I enjoy. I don't like Cinderella or Peter Pan or Snow White, so I don't care about those ones. I do know they recently came out with a Rapunzel one. It was part of my most anticipated reads of the year, so I do want to buy that and read that. But yeah, this is the only one I've read so far. I read it several years ago, as you could tell, because it's really worn out. I didn't even know about this series until my sister bought it for me for either birthday or Christmas. I don't know. They're both in the same month. Because she knew I loved Beauty and the Beast, so she bought it for me. And this is basically what if Belle's mother cursed the beast. So in this version, Belle's mother was the enchantress that cursed the beast. And it's really good. I rated it 4 stars. I did enjoy this take on the classic tale, and it was actually good. You know, this was actually, I think, the first retelling I ever actually read, because I've never been big on retellings. But I do want to read the others, because this was a 4 star, so I figured the others might be a 4 star as well, depending on how well those are and how well I like the fairy tale as well. This is also my favorite fairy tale, so obviously I like the retelling. But yeah, I enjoyed it. So this is kind of a retelling as well, but not just of one fairy tale. It has mentioned a bunch, like it mentioned Bella at one point, it mentioned Cinderella, but you don't really get to see much of them because it's not about them. But it's about Dorothea, who's basically this version of Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, as you can tell, and she makes a wish that ends up, how should I put this? It's one of those takes where, you know, someone gets a wish, they make the wish, and then it backfires on them. I can't think of an example right now, but one will eventually come to me when I'm not thinking about it, because that's how it goes, right? But the wish, she was tired of her life, and she accidentally broke the rules of fairy tale. So now everything was out of whack, and Dorothea ended up having to flee, and there was this curse on her family as well, so she wasn't even allowed to leave her palace, out of fear that the curse might be activated. So she ends up having to flee with Cato, who she cannot stand, and Rexy, her servant. Cato is the man who she's supposed to marry, the prince or whatever, and then Rexy, her servant, who's also Robin Hood's daughter, who she also doesn't like. So there's a lot going on there, and they have to try to fix the rules of fairy tale. So this is the only series I've ever read where I didn't actually like the 3 main characters when I first read it. I didn't like Dorothea, Cato, or Rexy for different reasons. Cato was just a jerk. Dorothea's selfish, and Rexy's a snob. So, yeah. But by the end of the first book, I grew to love Dorothea and Cato, especially Cato. He grew on me a lot. I fell in love with him. And then I also grew to love Dorothea a lot as well. Then there's Rexy. Don't get me wrong, she did grow on me a little bit by what she does at the end of this book. She saves Dorothea, and she just showed that she does care, even though she technically did betray them. but then the second book, so this is Dorothea's point of view. The second book is Rexy's point of view, and she kind of reverted back to her snobbish self, and I got very irritated with her. And don't get me wrong, the second book was still pretty good. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first because I had to read it from her point of view when I much rather read it from Dorothea's point of view again. Then in the third book, it's one chapter Dorothea's point of view, another is Rex's point of view, and I was like, I was into the Dorothea ones, and don't get me wrong, some of the Rexy ones was okay. I just don't like reading from her point of view because I don't like her. I was very upset that I think the third book should have been Cato's point of view, but I guess at the same time it couldn't been because of what happened in the second book, and then you'll have to read to understand. So I guess I understand why it couldn't have been Cato's point of view, but still it made me upset that Dorothea and Rexy get point of views and Cato does not. He deserves his own point of view book. Do what they did with 4 or on Divergent. You know, he got his own book. Cato deserves his own book. I love Cato. But yeah, that's kind of what that book is about. Then there's this book. There's 5 books. This is the Guardian series. This one is about Nicholas St. North and the Battle of the Nightmare King. So I don't know if you guys have seen Rise of the Guardians, but it's one of my favorite animated movies. I absolutely love Rise of the Guardians. It's basically about all these different guardians: Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, Sandman, and Jack Frost. Am I missing one? No. Santa, Bunny, Tooth, Jack, Sandy. No, that's all of them. Okay. And then there's also Pitch Black, their enemy, who is trying to bring back the Dark Ages, so they have to stop him. Sandy is my favorite character. He is superior. He is the best. And no one can tell me otherwise. But, I found out they made books about them. Each book is about a different character. I think it's going to be about their life before they became guardians. I might be wrong, but I would be interested in seeing, because like you find out a little bit about Jack's past and you find out why they chose him to become a guardian in the movie. We don't know much about the other people's past. I know that Sandy is the oldest of them all and was the first guardian. But other than that, I don't know much about their past, so I'm hoping each book will tell us about their past and how they become a guardian, because they had to do something special, something worthy to become a guardian, as you saw for Jack, because he ended up dying, saving his little sister. That's why the moon chose him to be a guardian. And I would really like to see why he chose the other people. But then at the same time, it's like, then what is Jack's going to be about? I mean, it could be more about his past. We only got to see a small, like a 5-minute flashback. But yeah, so this one, the first book is about Santa, North. They call him North. Then the second book is about Bunny. I think it's the second book is about Bunny. Then the third will be about Tooth. Fourth, Sandy, and fifth, Jack. So yeah, but they're really but it's Rise of the Guardians is really good, and yeah. Before Saint Nick was Saint Nick, he was North. Nicholas St. North, a daredevil swordsman, ruffian, and notorious outlaw. His prowess was the weaponry of all kinds was infamous, and he sought treasure and riches at all costs. Hardly hero material, but heroes are not born; they're tested. When real villains enter the scene in the shifting shape of Pitch and his dreaded feelings, North has a different use for his famed fighting abilities. Here, in the first in a series of epic Guardians Avengers, meet the legendary Saint Nick you've never known about for years, but it all turns out you don't really know him at all. So yeah, it does sound like, I didn't realize that North actually, I thought that everyone besides, what's his name? Jack, became Guardians before Pitch's reign of terror. I guess North's bravery going after Pitch is what made him a Guardian. Now I'm really interested to read these more than I already was. But yeah, they're really good, and it's kind of a good introduction to fantasy, because it shows each one of these people and how they became, and so it is light on the fantasy, so it's definitely a good introduction to fantasy. So many books. I love books. I love fantasy. This one, there's no cover for it because I lost it. I have no idea what happened to it, but I've had this book for years. My laptop's gonna die, so I need to plug it in real quick. because I don't want to die while I'm filming. That would suck. Ugh, if I can find it. There it is. Ugh, it's all tangled. Okay. Better. Okay, so this is Isle of Lost. The cover should have like be green with this red apple because Isle of Lost. So I don't know if you guys have seen the Disney movies Descendants, but I absolutely love the movies and the books are really good. So the first book is before the first movie. And it's about how they all became friends because at the beginning of this, Mel and Jay were already friends. They kind of bully Carlos, and then they just meet Evie and decide to bully her too because they don't like her because she's like some princess type. So because they have always been the more rougher parts of the group, but so you get to see how they become friends and how and a little bit about their journey before the first movie starts, and they decide to be good. Then there's the second book. Is in between movies 1 and 2. And then third and fourth books are in between movies 2 and 3. So it goes Isle of Lost, Descendants 1, Return to Isle of Lost, Descendants 2, Rise of the Isle of Lost, Escape from the Isle of Lost, and then Descendants 3. And I don't think they should make any more Descendants, most because of Carlos, because it won't be the same without him. And I know they did that little short. I haven't watched it yet, but I do know that apparently I think they killed him off, and that makes me really sad. But they can't replace him because Cameron Boyce is Carlos, and they can't do it without him because Carlos is Carlos. He is part of the movies, part of the main cast. He has to be on it. So, but I wouldn't mind if they made a book of it, showing after what happened after Descendants 3. I wouldn't mind that because Carlos could still be on there. They won't have to worry about Cameron Boyce's voice not being able to be on there. So yeah, but they're really good. And if you guys don't know what Descendants is about, it's basically the children of fairy tales, and they had sent all the classic Disney villains to their own little isle, trapped by magic barrier, so there's no magic can be even in there. And so it's several years later, and those villains have had kids, and but Beauty and so Belle and Beast have become kind of the rulers of all of Oradon, and Ben, their son, decides that he wants to do a proclamation since he's gonna be king soon, about how he wants kids from the Isle of Lost to get a chance here, a chance to be good, a chance to at least choose their own path because they are innocent. They didn't do what their parents did, and they didn't deserve to be locked up. So he started with only 4, and then if it works out, he'll continue bringing more and more in. He chose the Child of Maleficent, Queen of Hearts, no, Evil Queen, Jafar, and Cruella de Vil. Mel, daughter of Maleficent, Evie, daughter of the Evil Queen, Carlos, son of Cruella, and Jafar, son of Jafar, or Jay, son of Jafar. Jafar, son of Jafar. Shoot me now. But yeah. So, they do try to manipulate everyone and steal Fairy Godmother's wand to, free all the villains. But then they realize that, Mel falls in love with Ben. Evie has a thing for Doug and also realizes that she doesn't have to play dumb for a guy. Carlos is, he was always terrified of dogs because of what his mother told him, but then he ends up making friends with this dog, Doug, and Jay ends up becoming an athlete, and they all enjoy their lives in Oradon, and they realized that they didn't want to be evil, so they chose good, and yeah, so it's really good. If you haven't seen the movies, you should. There's 3 of them, and then there's 4 books, and you should definitely read them as well. It's a good introduction to fantasy, because it's just about the fairy tales kids, and there is magic, obviously, because Mel says some spells, since she has magic like her mother, and it shows Evie using her magic mirror a few times, I don't think Carlos or Jafar have, or Jay. Why do I keep on saying Jafar? Carlos or Jay has any magic. So yeah, that would make sense because Quilla and Jafar didn't have magic. So um, I also have Ever After High, A Wonderland of a World, which is also children of fairy tales. But this one is a bit different because you're supposed to follow your parents' footsteps, and you're not, and you have to, but it's kind of a rule. But then Raven, well, didn't want to because she didn't want to be evil like her mother, the evil queen. And then other people start saying that they didn't want to follow their destinies, and Apple's really selfish because she thinks everyone should follow their destiny so she can get her happily ever after because that's all she cares about. I have Apple issues. I really don't like her. But third book is my all-time favorite out of the series. Obviously, it's the only one I cared about keeping because the other ones I wasn't a fan of. But it's really good. It's also about the Wonderland characters who were always my favorite characters in the TV show. So there is magic, and this one, so if you like Alice in Wonderland, I definitely suggest checking this one out because there's a lot of, because the Jabberwocky is free and starts making Ever After into its own little wonderland, so things don't exactly make sense, and Lizzie, so everyone starts getting turned into things, like Raven gets turned into a raven, Apple gets turned into Apple, kind of like that, and Cedar got turned into a normal real girl, so she has to help the Wonderlandians, Maddie, Lizzie, and Kitty, stop the Jabberwocky and put everything back to normal. Even though part of them like that because they're trapped from Wonderland, they can't go back to their home and they miss it. So part of them enjoy the madness, because no one really understood them because they're mad, and but at the same time they realize that Ever After has sort of become their home. But it's just really good and intriguing, and there is a lot of madness because of the Wonderland portion of the book, but I tapped it quite a bit, as you can tell. I really enjoyed it. It's a 5-star read, so I highly recommend this. There is magic, obviously, with the Jabberwocky transforming and everything, and Raven has powers that you see her use before she gets turned into a raven. So yeah, I just recommend doing this. Then there's, what else is there? There's Legend of Shadow High. This is also by the same author. Well, one of the authors, Shannon Hale and Dean Hale, worked together for this book, but Shannon Hale was the one that wrote the other Ever After High books. So basically, it's an Ever After High and Monster High crossover, and the Evil Queen and Monica work together because my one thing I had issues with this book was the fact that it followed the reboot Monster High instead of the original, which made me upset because the reboot doesn't hold to the original. But so everyone's worlds start to get merged together, and it could hurt everyone. So they have to try to fix it and make all the worlds go back to where they belong. And then Dracula and Frankie and Apple and Raven and Maddie all have to work together to stop the Evil Queen and Monica and put everything right. So yeah. But there's monsters and then fairy tales, so it's a good mix of those. I think I'm almost done. Yeah, I'm almost done. I only have 4 series left to talk about, so let's do this. So we're going to talk about Monster High. Duh. Monster High is superior. Monster High is amazing. I'm in love with Monster High. The books, the movies, the Wii U game of 13 Wishes. I just love Monster High. Period. That's why I'm co-hosting the Monster High Readathon. When I heard about it, I was like, oh, I need to be a part of this. But this book is a little different than the franchise because in here Monster High does not yet actually exist. The monsters have to fit in with normies and go to a normie school and pretend to be normies. And it's really hard because that means like a lot of makeup for some of them. Like Frankie, she is mint green. She has to do makeup to look like me. Dracula, I think, needs darker makeup because she's a vampire, so she's pale. And then she also can't smile because, well, she just can't show her teeth. So she can't do a big smile because she has fangs. But yeah, but then Frankie doesn't like this and she wants to change things. and she does befriend a human, Melody, who ends up falling for Jackson, who is half normie, half human, or half no. Normies are humans. Okay, half normie, half monster. And they have to try to make it so the monsters can be accepted, because Frankie didn't want to hide. So her and her friends and Melody, Draculaura, Laguna, Claudine, all of them, Cleo, I think that's all of them, have to try to come out and show everyone that they're real and they're not going anywhere, and they have to fight for their rights. And it's actually a really good series, and I enjoyed it. But there's monsters, and there's obviously magic because of it. But not too heavy on the magic, because it's just mostly about the monsters trying to be accepted for who they are, which is kind of like Monster High. It's always about being true to yourself, let your freaky flaws shine. So yeah. And there's also this Monster High series, which is a little bit more like the actual Monster High movies, because Monster High is already here, and it's basically true to the movies. Only difference is that Frankie, Draculaura, Laguna, Cleo, and Claudine, who are usually the main characters, aren't. These three are the main characters, and so is Psy, who is a Cyclops, who was created by the author Kitty Danchberry, because he wasn't actually in the movies. But it's about Venus McSteen. No, I'm done. I can't believe I said that. Venus McFlytrap, Rebecca Steam, and Rochelle Coyle. There, that's better. Mixed theme. I just created my own Monster High character, okay? A crossover, a hybrid between a Venus and oh my gosh, I'm done. A hybrid between a play monster and a robot. I was like a hybrid between a Venus and a Rebecca. What the heck is wrong with me today? But pushing all that aside, so basically they're new to school, okay? So is Psy. Psy isn't, shown a lot at the beginning, but he doesn't also get the hype he deserves, I feel like. I mean, he's very underrated, and I feel like everyone takes him for granted because he's always just there, and it makes me sad. But he's always helping them, and he's always on their side, and usually they never feel like they can trust anyone, so they always trust the four of them. They always trust one another in that group. But as they come to school and are new, so does a new teacher who claims to be a dragon whisperer, but in reality she's a monster whisperer and starts brainwashing everyone. They manage to save her, but at the end of the book she claims that she was also brainwashed. So, but the four of them obviously doesn't believe her. So the next 2 books is about them investigating what's really going on, and they do investigate if she was telling the truth, because they couldn't risk not trying to investigate that if it is the truth, but they still investigated her because they still didn't trust her. So yeah, but it's really good, and it's about monsters, so there's light magic because of that, but monsters, so it's all spooky. So I have Bewitched in Oz, which they're in Oz, obviously, and magic's illegal, but Ziri, who's the main character, her best friends Vashti and Tabitha, and her crushes, little brother Brink, all have magic, and so they sneak off every day to train with their magic and practice until flying monkeys take away Tabitha. So they have to go on this journey to the Emerald Castle to save Tabitha and find a way to make magic legal, because magic is I really love that. Ziri is very passionate, and she's always like, magic is a part of us, and taking it away will be taking away a part of who we are. And she was I can't speak today. She was insistent on that, and it was just so beautiful that she was true to herself, and it was just amazing. And yeah, there's only 2 books. It's a duology, but I really enjoy it, and it's very underrated. I do plan on rereading this soon because I only read it once, but I loved it. It was 5 stars for me. And the last book I will be talking about is the Skinjacker Trilogy. So, I never really thought about it, but my best friend made a comment on the guessed plot video I did the other day, about how it looks kind of like a horror, and then someone commented, Megan from Mythical Megan, so you should go subscribe to her if you haven't. She's great, but that it does kind of look like horror, and I never really thought about it, but it does. But it's not. It's fantasy. But it's light on the fantasy. So it's also a great introduction to fantasy. This is Allie and Nick. So in the very first chapter, they don't know each other yet. They both are in different cars, and the cars crash and boom, they die. That's the very first chapter, so it's not a spoiler. Very first chapter, right there. But some way to start a book. The two main characters die. That definitely caught my attention when I first read it. But they end up in Everlost, which is a place in between life and death. So they end up trying to figure out what to do now that they're dead and stuck in Everlost. Like, what do their lives or unlives mean? I don't know, but so they have to try to figure that out, and then you meet. I'm gonna try my hardest not to get into a rant, because every time I talk about this character, I get into a rant about how much I hate her. And that's Mary Hightower. I hate her with a burning passion. Like, seriously, I hate her so much. But so they end up having to the McGill is what seems like the enemy at the beginning, but then you find out that's technically not true, because Mary Hightower is the real villain. There's an enemies to lovers, which I absolutely love this enemies to lovers. I love enemies to lovers, period. But they end up being on this war. They found themselves on this war. The war never would have happened if the two of them didn't get there, because Allie met the McGill, and Nick met Mary, and even though he loved her, he went against her because what she was doing was wrong. And so this entire war happened, and then Mary Hightower tries to stinking turn the living world into Everlost so she can rule the entire world, living and dead, which would all be dead if she has her way for it. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's actually not that hard to understand when you're reading it. And it's really light and fantasy, not too much magic, because it's mostly about them being ghosts. There's also skinjackers, that's why it's called the Skinjacker Trilogy. Allie is not actually dead because she's in a coma, because skinjackers are ghosts that can possess people, because they still have that connection to the living world, so they can skinjack people. And you can only do that if you're in a coma, because you're not fully dead, but you're not really alive at the moment either. But yeah, that's all for this video. I really hope some of you non-fantasy readers give some of these a try, because they're really good. And some of these, like Monster High, you don't actually have to watch the movies to be able to read and understand the books. I do recommend watching the movies as well, just because they're amazing. Same with Once Upon a Time. At least the first two you don't have to do. The ones about Regina Red, because they're flashbacks for before the series started. Hocus Pocus, you obviously need to watch Hocus Pocus. Ever After High, you don't have to watch the show to read read the book. Man, okay, I'm done. So that's it. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you read any of these. If you want to read any of these, if I have convinced you to give fantasy a try, because I would love that, because fantasy is my genre. And yeah, so I'll be back at you with another video tomorrow, because I'm still doing Vlogoween this month, where I post one video every day just this month, and then I'll go back to just posting a video once or twice a week. So yeah, that is all, and I'll talk to you guys later.